James Carter stepped out of his battered delivery van in front of Grandview Towers, the city's most exclusive residential building. His worn work boots scraping against the pristine pavement, his faded blue uniform hung loose on his frame, and the sole of his right shoe flapped with each step, held together by strips of duct tape. Inside the gleaming marble lobby, a group of wealthy young residents turned to stare, their designer clothes and jewelry catching the light from the crystal chandeliers above. Their laughter started as whispers, then grew louder as they pointed at his appearance, mocking his torn shoes and aged van. They demanded security remove him, treating him like he was nothing more than trash that had wandered into their perfect world. James stood quietly, his weathered face calm, his eyes patient. They had no idea that this humble delivery man owned 60% of the building where they lived and controlled half the commercial real estate in the entire city. What happened next would change their lives forever. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you. James Carter guided his 1998 Ford delivery van through the gleaming downtown district, past towering glass buildings that reflected the morning sun like beacons of wealth and power. At 52 years old, he had the kind of face that told a story of hard work and perseverance, lines etched around his eyes from decades of early mornings and long days. His simple blue uniform bore the logo of Metro Express Delivery, a small local company that had served the city for 30 years. And the fabric had faded from countless washings until it was more gray than blue. On his feet were work boots that had seen better days, the right one held together with silver duct tape where the sole had begun to separate from the leather, a temporary fix that had become permanent over the past 6 months. James had other shoes, of course. Closets full of handcrafted Italian leather and designer brands that he never wore. But these boots felt right for Wednesday mornings. Every Wednesday for the past 15 years, he had driven this same route, delivered these same packages, connected with the same people who had no idea who he really was. It was his choice, his ritual, his way of remembering where he had come from. At a red light, James smiled at a street vendor setting up a coffee cart, the same vendor who had sold him breakfast burritos 40 years ago, when James himself was a struggling delivery driver trying to make ends meet. In the back of his van, packages were organized with meticulous care, sorted by address and stacked securely so nothing would shift during transport. James believed that every package mattered, every delivery was a promise kept. Every person deserved respect and reliability. He had built an empire on these principles, transforming himself from a young man with nothing but a strong back and determination into one of the wealthiest real estate developers in the state. But wealth had never changed what he valued most: honest work, human connection, and the dignity that came from earning your place in the world. As he pulled into the loading zone in front of his next stop, James felt the familiar sense of purpose that had guided him through 5 decades of life. Today was just another Wednesday, another route, another opportunity to remember who he was beneath everything else. In the lobby of Grandview Towers, 4 young people commanded the seating area near the marble fountain like it was their personal kingdom. Tyler Ashford, 26 years old, and dressed in a charcoal gray suit that cost more than most people earned in 3 months, sprawled across an entire sofa meant for 3, his arm draped along the back in a posture of absolute ownership. His Rolex Submariner caught the light with every casual gesture, a watch worth $80,000 that he checked constantly, not to tell time, but to ensure others noticed it. Madison Pierce sat opposite him, 24, and breathtaking in a blush-pink designer dress that hugged her model-thin frame, her limited-edition Hermes Birkin bag positioned prominently on the cushion beside her as if it deserved its own seat. Her honey-blonde hair fell in perfect waves that had required 2 hours and $300 at the salon that morning. And her phone was never far from her hand, ready to capture content for her 200,000 Instagram followers. Christopher Kane, 25, and heir to the Kane Hotel empire, leaned against the arm of Madison's sofa with practiced nonchalance, his navy blazer perfectly tailored to his athletic build, his Italian leather shoes so polished they gleamed like mirrors. The platinum watch on his wrist was a custom Patek Philippe, a graduation gift from his father worth more than a luxury car. Vanessa Hartley, 23, with dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, wore luxury athleisure that somehow cost as much as evening wear, her yoga pants, and matching jacket bearing designer logos that screamed exclusivity. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist sparkled with every movement. A sweet 16 present from her venture capitalist father, they held overpriced coffee drinks from the boutique cafe on the ground floor. $15 lattes they barely sipped, and their laughter echoed through the lobby with a particular volume of people who had never been told to quiet down. Tyler was describing their upcoming trip to Monaco in excruciating detail, his voice carrying across the marble expanse so everyone within earshot would know exactly how privileged their lives were. They took up space like it was their birthright, legs extended into walkways, bags scattered across multiple surfaces, their entire presence announcing that they belonged here and everyone else was simply allowed to exist in their world. James pushed through the revolving glass door. 3 packages stacked carefully in his arms, the weight distributed evenly as he had learned to do decades ago when his back was younger and stronger. The lobby opened before him in all its opulent glory, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and reflecting off the polished marble floors that gleamed like ice. The moment he stepped inside, the animated conversation near the fountain died mid-sentence. Tyler noticed him first, his eyes traveling from James's face down to the duct-taped boots and back up again. And something shifted in his expression, a smirk forming at the corners of his mouth. He exchanged a glance with Madison, who followed his gaze and immediately covered her mouth to suppress a giggle that escaped anyway. Christopher straightened slightly, his eyes narrowing as he took in James's faded uniform and weathered appearance. Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose as her nose wrinkled ever so slightly, as if she had detected an unpleasant odor. Tyler was the first to speak, his voice cutting across the lobby with deliberate volume. Interesting. I didn't realize the help was allowed to use the front entrance. Did someone forget to tell him where the service door is? His friends erupted in laughter, the sound sharp and cruel in the elegant space. James continued walking toward the concierge desk, his expression unchanged, calm and purposeful. Madison leaned forward, her manicured finger pointing directly at his feet. "Oh my God! Are those shoes held together with tape? Tyler, look at his shoes!" Her giggles grew louder, her phone already rising as if to capture the moment. As James passed their seating area, Christopher made an exaggerated show of pulling his expensive leather briefcase closer to his body, as if proximity to James might somehow contaminate it. Vanessa shifted in her seat, angling her body away with obvious distaste. James glanced in their direction and offered a polite nod, a simple acknowledgement of their presence, his face betraying no offense or anger. To them, this gesture read as submission, as proof that he knew his place beneath them. At the concierge desk, Emma looked up and her face brightened immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. How are you today?" Her greeting was warm and genuine, her smile reaching her eyes. Tyler rose from the sofa with the fluid confidence of someone who had never faced consequences for his actions, his expensive suit moving with him as he approached James with exaggerated concern etched across his features. His voice rang out across the lobby, each word dripping with condescension. "Excuse me, sir, but I think you might be a little confused. The service entrance is around the back of the building. You know, where deliveries are supposed to go?" He gestured broadly with his hands as if giving directions to someone who might not understand basic English, his movements theatrical and mocking. James set the packages down gently on the desk and turned to face Tyler, his expression remaining neutral and calm. "I'm just delivering packages, sir. I'll only be a moment." His voice was quiet, steady, respectful. Tyler turned back to his friends with raised eyebrows, as if James had just said something absurd, then looked at James again with his head tilted. "Delivering packages in that vintage uniform? What is that? From the 1980s? Is your company struggling? Should we be concerned about whether our packages are actually going to arrive?" Madison was already on her feet. Her phone raised and pointed directly at James, the camera capturing every angle. "This is amazing. I need to document this for my followers. Authentic working-class fashion, you guys. Look at the distressed aesthetic. The duct tape is really a statement piece." She circled James slowly, narrating as she filmed, her voice filled with false enthusiasm that barely masked her cruelty. Christopher remained seated but called out across the lobby, his voice full of mock sympathy. "We should start a charity. Seriously, we could call it Shoes for the Less Fortunate. I think our friend here could be our first recipient." Vanessa clapped her hands together in delight. "Oh my God, Christopher, that's perfect! We could make it a whole thing. Get some press coverage." Their laughter bounced off the marble walls and soaring ceiling, amplified by the acoustics of the grand space, filling every corner with their amusement at James's expense. Other people in the lobby had stopped what they were doing, some watching with uncomfortable expressions, others pretending not to notice. Vanessa stood and walked toward James with deliberate slowness, her diamond bracelet catching the light with every step. When she reached him, she pulled a $20 bill from her designer wallet and held it out, her voice artificially sweet and painfully loud, as if speaking to someone hard of hearing or simple-minded. "Here you go, sweetie. Why don't you take this and get yourself some coffee? Maybe something to eat too? You look like you could use it." She spoke each word slowly, over-enunciating, her head tilted with exaggerated sympathy. James looked at the money, then at her face, his expression kind but firm. "That's very generous of you, miss. But I'm fine. Thank you." He turned back to Emma, ready to complete his delivery. The rejection hit Vanessa like a slap. Her false smile disappeared instantly, replaced by an expression of shock that someone like him would refuse her charity. Tyler's demeanor shifted in that moment, his playful mockery hardening into something sharper and more hostile. "Wait a second. Hold on." His voice had lost its amused tone, replaced by genuine irritation. "Are you even a real delivery person? Or are you just some homeless guy who wandered in here trying to get access to the building?" He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Security!" Tyler's voice cracked like a whip through the lobby. "Security! We need someone to check this man's credentials immediately." Christopher stood now too, his arms crossed over his chest. This is exactly the kind of security failure that makes buildings like this vulnerable. Anyone can just walk in off the street, apparently. Around the lobby, other visitors had stopped their conversations and activities entirely. An elderly couple near the elevator exchanged uncomfortable glances. A businessman in a suit shifted his weight awkwardly, clearly disturbed by what he was witnessing but uncertain whether to intervene. A young mother pulled her child closer, watching with wide eyes. Emma stepped forward from behind the desk, her voice professional but strained. "Mr. Ashford. Mr. Carter is a regular delivery driver. He comes every Wednesday. There's no issue here." Tyler didn't even look at her. "I wasn't asking you, Emma. I'm talking to security." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, as if she were nothing more than an annoying insect. The tension in the lobby thickened like humidity before a storm. Robert Mitchell emerged from behind the security desk, his 58 years evident in the slight stoop of his shoulders and the gray threading through his dark hair. He had worked at Grandview Towers for 20 years, long enough to know every secret the building held, and his face showed the conflict of a man being forced into an impossible position. As he approached, his eyes found James's face, and something passed between them, a moment of recognition and mutual respect that Tyler completely missed in his self-righteous fury. Tyler jabbed his finger toward James, his voice sharp and commanding. "Robert, I want this vagrant removed from the premises immediately. He's harassing residents and making everyone uncomfortable." Madison had her phone raised high, narrating in her most dramatic voice as she filmed. So this is what happens when entitled service workers think they can just invade luxury spaces. The audacity is actually incredible. Security is being called because this man refuses to use the proper entrance. She panned the camera from James to Tyler to capture every moment. Christopher moved closer, his voice rising to ensure everyone in the lobby could hear him. "This is unacceptable. People like him make the entire building look bad. Do you know what this does to property values? My father pays a fortune to live in a building with standards. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself as if physically threatened. I don't feel safe with him here. His whole presence makes me uncomfortable. This is supposed to be a secure building. James remained exactly where he stood, his weathered hands carefully setting down the packages he still held onto the marble floor with deliberate gentleness, treating them with the same care he had shown all morning. He straightened slowly, his back straight despite the years of physical labor, and took a deep, steadying breath that expanded his chest beneath the faded uniform. His expression remained patient, almost serene, but something in his eyes had changed, a flicker of profound disappointment at what he was witnessing, at the cruelty these young people displayed so casually, at their complete inability to see him as a human being worthy of basic respect. James's voice, when he finally spoke at length, carried a quality that made everyone in the lobby pause. It was calm and measured, without a trace of anger or defensiveness, filled instead with a kindness that seemed almost out of place given the circumstances. I understand your concerns about the building's image and standards. These are important things, and I can see why my appearance might not meet your expectations. He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze steady and sincere. I apologize if my presence here has caused you any discomfort. That was never my intention. The humility in his words was genuine, not the false humility of someone trying to diffuse a situation, but real acceptance of their perception without fighting against it. He showed no trace of wounded pride, no hint of the defensive anger they had been expecting, no pleading or cowering that would have satisfied their sense of superiority. Tyler's face registered confusion. His carefully constructed narrative disrupted by James's unexpected grace. It threw him off balance, made him uncertain, and uncertainty in Tyler always transformed into aggression. What company do you work for? His voice grew harder, more demanding. I want to call them right now and file a formal complaint about your conduct and your appearance. They need to know their drivers are creating problems. James met his eyes calmly. Metro Express Delivery. They're a local company on 5th Street. Christopher already had his phone out, fingers flying across the screen as he searched. After a moment, he laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Metro Express? Are you serious? This place has been around since the Dark Ages. Look at this website. It looks like it was made in 2005. They have 3 vans and operate out of a warehouse. He turned the screen to show Madison. This is the company that's delivering to Grandview Towers? Madison's filming continued, but her narration had taken on an even crueler edge. So not only is this man inappropriately dressed, he works for literally the most bottom-tier delivery service in the city. This keeps getting better. The elevator chimed softly, and its polished brass doors slid open to reveal Margaret Chen, a 70-year-old woman with silver hair pulled into an elegant bun and posture that spoke of a lifetime of grace and discipline. She had lived in Grandview Towers for 15 years, long enough to remember when the building valued character as much as bank accounts. She stepped into the lobby and immediately took in the scene before her, her sharp eyes moving from the cluster of young people to James standing calmly at the center of their ridicule, and her expression hardened with unmistakable disapproval. Margaret walked directly toward James, her steps measured and purposeful despite her age, her designer handbag hanging from the crook of her arm with understated elegance that made Madison's ostentatious display look cheap by comparison. Mr. Carter, she said warmly, her voice clear and strong. How wonderful to see you. Thank you, as always, for being so careful with my packages. You're the only delivery person who actually reads the fragile labels. She smiled at him with genuine affection. Then she turned to face Tyler and his friends, and her expression transformed into something cold and cutting. What exactly is happening here? I just witnessed the most appalling display of rudeness and lack of basic human decency I have seen in years. Tyler barely glanced at her, waving his hand dismissively. This doesn't concern you, Mrs. Chen. This is a security matter. You're a bit out of touch with how these things work. Madison rolled her eyes dramatically, her phone still recording. Seriously, this is so typical. Old people always think everyone deserves a participation trophy. Christopher set his coffee down and looked at Margaret with exaggerated concern. Mrs. Chen, are you feeling all right? You might be experiencing some confusion. This man is not a legitimate resident or guest. Vanessa laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the marble. Maybe someone should call her family. Margaret's spine somehow became even straighter, her voice dropping to a tone of absolute authority. Your parents would be ashamed of you. All of you. She turned back to James. I'm happy to wait here with you until this nonsense is resolved. James's expression softened with gratitude. That's very kind of you, Mrs. Chen, but it's not necessary. I'm sure this will be sorted out shortly. Tyler's face flushed red, his authority challenged by someone he considered irrelevant, and the combination of embarrassment and rage pushed him past the point of performative cruelty into something darker and more desperate. He pulled out his phone with a sharp, aggressive motion. That's it. I'm calling the building owner right now. This is completely unacceptable. Inadequate security, allowing undesirables into the building, staff that doesn't know their place. He held the phone up like a weapon. My family has a significant investment in this building. We own several units here, and we have influence. Real influence. Christopher stepped forward, his voice joining Tyler's in a crescendo of entitlement. The Kane family also has significant holdings in this property. My father is going to hear about this security failure. And trust me, he won't be happy. We expect a certain standard when we invest millions of dollars. Madison's thumb was already moving across her phone screen, her voice taking on the practiced cadence of her influencer persona. I'm posting about this right now. 200,000 followers are going to hear about how Grandview Towers has completely failed to maintain basic security standards. This is going viral. She looked up at James with undisguised malice. Hope you're ready to lose your job. Vanessa pulled out her own phone, scrolling through her contacts with theatrical purpose. My father has investors interested in this building. I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear how his potential investment allows just anyone to wander through the front doors. He can pull out of the deal entirely. Robert stood frozen between the groups, his weathered face showing the strain of 2 decades of service being weaponized against him. His eyes darted between Tyler and James, his hands clenched at his sides, clearly distressed by his powerlessness in this moment. James remained utterly still, his breathing slow and even, his expression peaceful in a way that seemed almost meditative. The chaos swirled around him like a storm around the eye. But he stood at the center, untouched by the fury. The packages rested at his feet where he had placed them, still waiting to be delivered. At the concierge desk, Emma gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white, her young face tight with anxiety as she watched the situation spiral completely out of control. Tyler held his phone to his ear, his voice projecting across the entire lobby, as if performing for an audience. Yes, hello, Richard? Tyler Ashford here. We have a serious situation in the lobby that requires immediate attention. He paced in a tight circle, his free hand gesturing dramatically. There's a vagrant who's refused to use the service entrance and is now harassing residents. Security seems unable or unwilling to handle it properly. He paused, listening, then continued with even more emphasis. My family has substantial financial stake in this building, as you know. We own several units, and we expect a certain level of security and standards to be maintained. This is completely unacceptable. While Tyler continued his theatrical performance, James turned slightly toward Robert and spoke quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Robert, would it be possible to use the house phone to make a quick call? Robert's eyes met James's, and in them was complete understanding and recognition of exactly who stood before him. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his personal cell phone, pressing it into James's hand with a subtle nod. Use mine, sir, he said under his breath. James's expression warmed with gratitude. Thank you, Robert. He stepped a few feet away from the group, turning his back to them, and dialed a number from memory. His voice when he spoke was low and measured, the words inaudible to anyone more than a foot away. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds before he ended the call and returned Robert's phone with a quiet word of thanks. Tyler, Madison, Christopher, and Vanessa were completely oblivious to this exchange, too absorbed in their own drama to notice anything happening outside their immediate circle. Tyler ended his call with a flourish, snapping his phone down to his side. There. Action is being taken. People are on their way down right now to handle this situation properly. His smile was triumphant, his chest puffed with self-satisfaction. Madison continued filming, her camera capturing Tyler's victory moment. Every second of this security failure documented. Christopher glanced at his expensive watch with exaggerated impatience. About time. I have a lunch meeting in 40 minutes. The elevator chimed, a soft musical note that cut through the tension like a bell announcing a new act. The brass doors slid open with mechanical precision to reveal 3 figures standing in the car. Catherine Morrison stepped out first, the building manager in her mid-40s, her charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, her dark hair pulled back in a style that spoke of efficiency and authority. Her expression was grave, her mouth set in a tight line, her eyes sweeping across the lobby to assess the situation. Behind her came 2 other people. David Ashford emerged second, a real estate investor in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a custom navy suit that spoke of old money and careful investments. His face showed confusion, his eyebrows drawn together as he tried to understand why he had been summoned from his office on the 15th floor. Patricia Pierce followed, elegant in her early 50s, wearing a cream-colored dress and pearls that complemented her composed demeanor, though concern flickered in her intelligent eyes as she took in the scene before her. Tyler's face transformed immediately, and confusion giving way to relief, and then to barely contained triumph. He had called for backup and backup had arrived, or so he thought. "Dad! Mrs. Morrison! Thank God you're here." He strode toward them with renewed confidence. "This man has been disrupting the lobby, refusing to use the service entrance, and making residents uncomfortable. I've been trying to get security to handle it, but clearly we need management intervention." He pointed directly at James, his gesture accusatory and dismissive. "He's been belligerent and inappropriate, and honestly, I think he might not even be a legitimate delivery person." Madison rushed to her mother's side, her phone extended to show the video she had been recording. "Mom, look, I got everything on camera. This is going to be such an important post about security failures in luxury buildings. The engagement is going to be insane." Christopher and Vanessa straightened their postures, standing taller, their expressions shifting to vindicated satisfaction. They had been right all along, their actions justified, and now the proper authorities were here to restore order and confirm their worldview. James remained exactly where he had been standing, several feet from the concierge desk, the packages still resting at his feet. His expression showed no anxiety, no fear, no anticipation. He was simply present, patient, waiting with the calm of someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. Catherine Morrison's voice cut through the lobby like a blade, controlled and professional, but carrying an undercurrent of ice that made everyone present instinctively straighten. "Ashford." She addressed Tyler directly, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that would have warned a wiser person. "Do you have any idea who you've been harassing for the past 15 minutes? Tyler blinked, thrown off by the question, his confidence wavering for the first time. "What? I haven't been harassing anyone. I've been trying to address a security issue with some delivery guy who doesn't understand building protocols." Catherine's expression hardened, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. David Ashford had been scanning the lobby during this exchange, and when his eyes finally landed on James, his face underwent a transformation that seemed to happen in slow motion. The color drained from his skin, leaving him pale and stricken. His mouth opened slightly, and recognition flooded his features with the force of a physical blow. "Oh God!" His voice came out barely above a whisper, hoarse with horror. "Tyler, please tell me you didn't." Patricia Pierce's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening as she too recognized the man in the worn delivery uniform. She had sat beside James Carter at 3 different charity galas, had watched him write checks for amounts that made her venture capitalist husband look modest, had heard him speak with quiet passion about giving back to the community that had given him everything. Tyler looked between his father and Catherine, his confusion morphing into the first seeds of genuine fear. "What? What's happening? Someone tell me what's going on." Catherine took a step forward, and when she spoke, her voice rang out clearly and deliberately, pitched to carry to every corner of the marble lobby and to reach every witness who had watched this humiliation unfold. The delivery man you've been mocking, the person you've called a vagrant and tried to have removed from the building, is James Carter, the founder and CEO of Carter Holdings, the majority owner of Grandview Towers. She paused, letting each word sink in like stones dropping into still water. Mr. Carter owns 60% of this building. The lobby went absolutely, utterly silent. The moment stretched and expanded, time seeming to slow as the truth detonated in the center of the lobby like a bomb. Tyler's face underwent a transformation that would have been comical if it weren't so devastating to witness. The color draining from his skin so quickly it looked like someone had pulled a plug, leaving him gray and waxy. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his eyes wide with an animal panic as his brain struggled to process what he had just heard. Madison's phone slipped in her suddenly nerveless fingers, nearly tumbling to the marble floor before she caught it with fumbling hands, the realization dawning that the video she had been filming with such glee now documented not a security failure, but her own spectacular humiliation. Every cruel word and mocking laugh captured forever. Christopher's expression froze completely, his face locked in a rictus of shock, his expensive watch suddenly feeling like a child's toy on his wrist. Vanessa took an involuntary step backward, her designer yoga pants and diamond bracelet offering no protection against the wave of horror washing over her. Around the lobby, other witnesses reacted with audible gasps and rising murmurs, conversations erupting in whispers as people turned to neighbors to confirm what they had just heard. Margaret Chen, still standing near James, allowed herself a small, deeply satisfied smile, the kind that came from watching justice served after years of watching entitled behavior go unchecked. Emma, behind the concierge desk, covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide but gleaming with relief that the truth had finally emerged. Robert stood noticeably straighter, his shoulders back, his expression one of vindication after being caught in an impossible position. David Ashford closed his eyes as if he could block out reality, his face a mask of dismay and disappointment. Patricia Pierce moved immediately toward James, her elegant composure cracking as an apology began forming on her lips. Catherine Morrison continued speaking, her voice steady and deliberate, each word another nail in the coffin of Tyler's arrogance. Mr. Carter also holds controlling interests in approximately half of the commercial real estate in this city. He is the founder of the Carter Foundation, which has donated over $40 million to local charities, job training programs, and community development initiatives. Tyler tried to speak, his mouth working desperately, but no sound emerged except a strangled noise that might have been the beginning of a word that died before it could be born. James inclined his head slightly, acknowledging Catherine's introduction with the same calm grace he had shown throughout the entire ordeal. "Thank you, Catherine." His voice remained gentle, unchanged by the revelation, as if being exposed as one of the wealthiest men in the city was simply another part of his Wednesday routine. Catherine turned slightly toward the gathered crowd, her tone shifting to something almost educational. Mr. Carter has worked one delivery route every Wednesday for the past 15 years. It's something he chooses to do, a way to stay connected to his roots and remember where he started. She paused, glancing at James with unmistakable respect. He began as a delivery driver 40 years ago, working for the very company he now owns a stake in. He built everything through hard work, integrity, and careful investment. Every property, every success, earned through his own effort. David Ashford stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of desperate supplication. "Mr. Carter, I am so incredibly sorry. I had no idea Tyler was even in the building today. If I had known, if I had any inkling this was happening, I would have stopped it immediately. Please. You have to understand. This doesn't reflect our family's values." His voice cracked with genuine distress. Patricia Pierce was already at James's side, her composure fractured by mortification. "Mr. Carter, I apologize from the bottom of my heart. Madison's behavior is inexcusable. We've clearly failed as parents if this is how she treats people. I'm so deeply ashamed." Christopher's fingers flew across his phone screen, typing James Carter's name into the search bar. His face went even paler as results flooded in. Article after article about philanthropic donations, business acquisitions, community leadership awards, Forbes profiles, Wall Street Journal features. Photographs of James in a tuxedo shaking hands with the governor. Vanessa had gone absolutely still, looking like she wanted the marble floor to open and swallow her whole. Tyler's entire body trembled, his former arrogance shattered and replaced by naked terror. When he finally found his voice, it emerged as a shaky whisper. "Mr. Carter, I didn't. I'm so sorry. I didn't know who you were. Please. I made a terrible mistake." James raised one hand gently, the gesture somehow commanding immediate silence despite its softness. The flurry of apologies stopped as if he had flipped a switch. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the lobby, not raised but clear, and the tone was not angry but filled with a disappointment that cut far deeper than rage ever could. "I want to speak to the four of you directly." His eyes moved to Tyler, Madison, Christopher, and Vanessa, each of whom seemed to shrink under his gaze. What happened here today wasn't about security or building standards. It was about respect, about dignity, about recognizing the fundamental value of every human being, regardless of how they're dressed or what vehicle they drive. He paused, letting the words settle. "You looked at my worn shoes and my old van and decided you knew everything about me. You never considered my character. You never thought about my humanity. You saw only surface, only appearance, and you judged me worthless." Each word landed like a physical weight, pressing down on the four young people until they seemed to curl inward. Tyler stared at the floor, unable to lift his eyes. Madison had gone very still, her phone hanging limp in her hand. Christopher's jaw worked soundlessly. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself, as if cold. "Your cruelty wasn't private," James continued, his voice remaining steady and kind even as he delivered truth that burned. "It was performed publicly, filmed for entertainment, designed specifically to humiliate another human being for your amusement and social media engagement. You tried to have me removed from a building I own because my presence offended your sense of aesthetic order." He turned then to David and Patricia, and his expression softened slightly. "Your children's behavior today is not entirely your fault. It's a symptom of something larger, of growing up in an environment where they've never had to struggle, never faced real consequences, never understood what it means to build something from nothing or to be judged unfairly." David and Patricia stood frozen, listening. But this moment, painful as it is, could be a learning opportunity for all of them. James turned his full attention to Tyler, and there was something in his steady gaze that made the young man visibly flinch. "Tyler, you mentioned that your family owns several units in this building and has influence here." His tone remained gentle but carried an edge of steel beneath the softness. "I want to address that claim directly. You don't own any units in Grandview Towers. Your parents own 2 units, one of which you currently occupy rent-free. The other they use when they're in the city." Tyler's face flushed with shame, his earlier boasts now exposed as hollow exaggerations. James continued, his voice steady and measured. "As the majority owner of this building, I have the authority to enforce all building policies and the resident conduct agreement that every occupant signs. Your behavior today, Tyler, violated multiple provisions of that agreement. Harassment of staff and service workers, creating public disturbances, and behavior unbecoming of a Grandview resident." The silence in the lobby was absolute, every person present holding their breath. "I'm not going to evict you," James said, and Tyler's shoulders sagged with relief so profound he nearly stumbled. "But you are now on probationary status. Any further complaints about your conduct, any additional violations, and you will be asked to leave permanently." Tyler nodded frantically, his voice breaking. "Yes, sir, I understand. I'm so sorry. It will never happen again. Never. I promise." James then shifted his gaze to Madison, who still clutched her phone like a lifeline. "Madison, you have a platform. 200,000 people follow you, listen to you, value your perspective." She nodded mutely, tears beginning to form in her eyes. You have a choice to make right now. You can delete that footage and use your platform to talk honestly about what you learned today, about prejudice and judgment and the danger of valuing appearance over character. Or you can keep it posted, and my legal team will pursue harassment charges with every resource at their disposal. Madison's fingers were already moving across her screen before James finished speaking, frantically deleting the video. Her stories, every trace of the footage she had captured. It's gone, she whispered. All of it. I'll delete everything. I'm so sorry. James's eyes moved to Christopher and Vanessa, who had been trying to make themselves invisible during the exchange. Christopher, Vanessa, you were willing participants in this cruelty. You laughed, you encouraged. You added your own insults to the pile. His voice remained kind, but firm. I encourage both of you to reflect deeply on your values and what kind of people you want to become. They nodded, unable to form words, their faces reflecting the shame of being seen clearly for the first time in their lives. Then James did something that surprised everyone in the lobby. His expression softened further, and when he spoke, his voice carried a note of genuine hope. I'm going to make you an offer, all four of you. Tyler, Madison, Christopher, and Vanessa looked up with cautious, fearful attention. The Carter Foundation runs a job training program for people from all backgrounds who are trying to build better lives. I'd like to invite you to volunteer there for 2 months. You'll work alongside people who are learning skills, rebuilding their lives, finding their footing. You'll learn delivery, driving, warehouse work, customer service, and other practical skills right alongside them. He paused, letting the offer sink in. Participation is completely voluntary. I won't force you, but I believe it would be valuable for you to understand what real work looks like, what real struggle means, and what dignity in labor actually feels like. If you complete the program, I'll write each of you a reference letter that honestly describes your growth and what you learned. David Ashford spoke immediately, his voice firm with parental authority tinged with desperation. Tyler will participate. Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Carter. Patricia nodded emphatically. Madison as well. We're grateful beyond words. Christopher and Vanessa exchanged glances with each other and their friends, and in that moment, they seemed to understand exactly how fortunate they were to be offered redemption instead of consequences. I'll do it, Christopher said quietly. Thank you. Me too, Vanessa added, her voice small. I want to learn. I need to learn. Margaret Chen stepped forward, her voice crisp with authority. I volunteer at the foundation twice a week. I'd be happy to personally supervise their work and ensure they get the full experience. 2 months had passed, and the Carter Foundation's warehouse hummed with productive activity on a Wednesday morning in early spring. Tyler Ashford stood in the loading bay wearing simple cargo pants and a foundation t-shirt. Both marked with honest sweat and work, his designer wardrobe packed away in boxes at the back of his closet where it would remain. He lifted boxes with practiced efficiency now, his movements no longer hesitant or performative, but genuinely capable. Calling out to his co-worker Marcus about the weight distribution in the truck they were loading together, his demeanor had transformed completely, the arrogance stripped away to reveal something quieter and more substantial. A young man learning the satisfaction of work done well and the respect earned through reliability. In the classroom wing, Madison Pierce stood before a group of 15 job seekers ranging in age from 19 to 62, teaching social media marketing strategies for small businesses and personal branding. She wore simple jeans and a plain blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No trace of the designer clothes or ostentatious accessories that had once defined her. When she spoke, her voice carried genuine warmth and encouragement, celebrating small victories when students grasped concepts, patiently explaining again when they struggled, using her skills to lift others rather than elevate herself. Christopher Kane sat in the Financial Literacy Center with a young single mother named Rosa, walking her through a budget worksheet, helping her understand how to balance her paycheck against rent and childcare and groceries. His wrist was bare, the platinum Patek Philippe stored away, replaced by a simple digital watch he had purchased for $12 because it was functional, and that was all that mattered now. He listened more than he spoke, asking questions about Rosa's goals and challenges, treating her expertise about her own life with the respect it deserved. Down the hall, Vanessa Hartley coordinated the job placement program from a desk covered in resumes and employer contact sheets, her phone pressed to her ear as she advocated passionately for a trainee named David, who deserved a chance at the warehouse position despite his patchy work history. She dressed in practical clothes now. Her diamond bracelet sold months ago, with the money donated back to the foundation. Margaret Chen moved through the building with quiet authority, observing, guiding, and nodding with approval at what she witnessed. When James arrived in his delivery uniform, packages in hand as always, all four of them stopped what they were doing to greet him with genuine smiles and respect that came from understanding, finally, who he truly was. James Carter pulled his delivery van into the familiar spot in front of Grandview Towers on a bright Wednesday morning, the spring sun warming the pavement beneath his worn boots. Before he could even open the back doors, Tyler appeared from around the corner in his own Metro Express uniform, grinning as he jogged over to help. Tyler worked weekends now for the delivery company, a job he had requested himself, finding satisfaction in the honest labor and the people he worked alongside. Together they unloaded packages, moving with the easy rhythm of colleagues who respected each other, their conversation flowing naturally about routes and schedules and weekend plans. Inside the lobby, Madison sat on one of the elegant sofas talking animatedly with Emma, the two young women now genuine friends who met for coffee every Thursday morning, their laughter bright and unforced. Christopher appeared from the elevator carrying his gym bag, and when he saw James entering with packages, he immediately held the door and reached out to take several boxes, insisting on helping carry them to the concierge desk. Near the fountain, a banner hung announcing the Service Worker Appreciation event that Vanessa had organized for the following weekend, complete with catered lunch and recognition awards for everyone who kept the building running. Catherine Morrison stood near her office door, observing the scene with quiet satisfaction, noting in her mental report how complaints had dropped by 70% since that day 2 months ago, and how residents now greeted staff by name. How community had replaced entitlement. David and Patricia had joined the Carter Foundation Board of Directors, their gratitude for the intervention that changed their children's lives, expressing itself in active service and generous donations. James completed his deliveries, exchanged warm greetings with people who now understood that worth had nothing to do with appearance, and walked back toward his van with Tyler beside him. Both men content in their work. True worth is never found in appearance, possessions, or status. It reveals itself in how we treat others, especially those we believe have nothing to offer us in return. Kindness and respect cost nothing, but reveal everything about who we really are. The measure of a person lies not in what they own or what they wear, but in who they are when they think no one important is watching, in the dignity they grant to every human being they encounter, in the understanding that every soul carries value beyond what the eye can see.